Good evening, folks. Welcome to Jesters of the Round Table, your favorite evening news radio show. We've got some breaking news for you tonight. We've got Detective Izzie on the line with us down here at the studio. Detective Izzie, you've just been to the scene of the crime down in Manhattan. Can you please share with us any information about this breaking news story?
Absolutely, Audrey. I wouldn't believe what I'm about to tell you if I didn't see it with my own two eyes. Peter Blagojevich, previously thought to have been dead, has been accused of being a vampire.
A vampire?
That's right. The neighbors of the Blagojeviches have disinterred Peter and staked him. When they did, they found that blood came fresh from his mouth and ears. It was quite a sight.
That's terrifying, my goodness. What have you concluded about this from looking at the body?
He wasn't decomposed. Looked like he was just taking a nap, to be frank. His eyes were open, his hair, his beard, his nails were long. I wouldn't be too quick to say that this man was not a vampire.
Well, indeed. What a turn of events for Manhattan. Folks, you've heard it here first. We ask that you stay vigilant. If you're going out at night, travel in pairs, go to the jazz club if you must, but please be safe. Thank you so much for your time, Detective Izzie, and for your delightful input on this situation.
Absolutely. Good night.
Good night, New York.
All right, settle down, take your seats. Going to start the lecture, sit down. If you're not here for the Slavic vampire course, please make your way toward the door, or don't. Today we're going to be covering...
Professor, I forgot my textbook. Do you have an extra one?
Did you not check the Canvas messages?
No, I was logged. I didn't charge my phone last night, and I didn't really want to bring my computer out with me because it's kind of heavy in my backpack.
It's okay. It's fine. I've got a copy for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I
appreciate it.
Here you go.
Thanks. Thank you.
Does everyone else have their copies of The Darkling by Jan Perkowski? Excellent. Thank you. Are we good to start? Thank you. Today's going to be a brief overview of the vampire. We'll get more in depth with this in later lectures, but I wanted to give you guys kind of an intro. So when we think of vampires, we think of an aristocratic, mysterious stranger, right? We think of someone who's dressed in a very stylish costume almost. He's pale, he bites with his fangs. But in folklore, he's really your neighbor, a peasant. He's familiar to you. He's your family. He is dressed in maybe a burial shroud, which could be maybe the cape, the origins of the vampire cape. He's got a red face. He doesn't have fangs. He doesn't really bite. He doesn't really do much of anything. Really, in folklore, vampires weren't very active. You were focused on the ritual quieting, the prevention of a vampire rather than the hunting of one. It's likely that the origins of vampires were from the spread of Christianity and the Christian burial rites. Many Slavic cultures burned their dead, but Christianity required the dead to be buried. You didn't want to burn your dead. I don't fully know why, because I haven't really studied. I think that's mostly Catholic, is it? I don't know.
Professor, didn't you get your PhD in this?
Who has a PhD in this room?
You, Professor.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. I like to foster a classroom where we can all question each other. So, since we're not burning our dead anymore, we put some rituals in place to ensure the soul could depart the body instead of the burning. So rituals are important for the liminal, the transitional periods. So birth, puberty, marriage, death, all that. There's rituals associated with each of those periods of our lives. And when you disrupt that, then you can get something like a vampire. The vampire is used as a scapegoat for phenomena like mass sickness, when there's crops and livestock failure. Even in cases like adultery, you could blame the vampire. Oh, it was a vampire who visited me. I don't know. That was super weird who you saw.
So the lust of the vampire did start earlier?
Yes, it did. Oh. There's a famous story called Nectanemo's Deception, in which a woman claimed that a vampire had visited her, the vampire of her dearly departed husband had visited her in the night. And they found out it was just her secret lover. They haven't gotten married yet, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that was a phenomenon that happened. I don't know about frequently, but enough that it has been recorded. And then also, you know, dying in your sleep, you could blame that on a vampire too. Now, since I'm a huge etymology nerd, I wanted to talk about this really quick.
Please.
Okay, so we have, should I go forwards or backwards? When I did my vampire class, our professor, like this was like the second to last lecture, he explained where the origins of the word vampire came from, and it was so funny how he hyped it up like it was like a long lost ancient secret. It was so good. So I think that's how I'll do it, because it's more fun that way. So we have the English vampire, from the Slavic vampir. We have regional differences like upir also that are still used, and then you have that from the Greek vampiras, which means vampire.
Okay, so where were the Grecian vampires, or was it like a metaphorical vampire?
No, there were vampires in Greece.
Okay, so I need you to tell me about that right now.
right now.
Yes, there were Greek vampires.
There were Greek vampires. They were actually. Well, I'll talk about more. Hold on, I want to talk about folklore vampires in a minute. I'm gonna finish the etymology first. Hold on. And then the Slavic, we had opiru or vopiru. It means like the evil, like like evil stuff. Also, don't correct me. I'm not gonna. I don't want any tweets. We don't have a Twitter. I don't want any tweets about this, okay? And then you have the Latin ampuru, which refers to Slavic funerary rites and like apotropaic practices against evil. And then you have the Latin impurus, means impure, which is used by the church. So vampire comes from the Latin impure.
Okay, interesting.
Used by the church, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hype it up as much as my professor did, but that's okay. We don't have the whole 6 months to talk about this. Vampires, this is actually interesting. Vampires are also referred to in some cultures with like taboo replacement names, like for werewolves.
Yeah.
Or sorcerers, strigoi, or sleep demons, moroi. And then they also have
that one. Oh, yeah. Moroi. I've heard that one too.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And then you also have taboo deformations, which are like you're calling it something deformations, not defamations, deformations.
Okay.
So instead of saying vampir, you'd say lampir, and then that's like it's a little different, but you kind of get the gist. It's like there's the thought that like if you say the name,
that's cool. That's good human storytelling again,
isn't it? Just
gosh.
You also have apotropaic euphemism, which apotropaic, if you don't know what that means, it's like it's like a preventative. It like wards off stuff. We use that word a lot. So apotropaic euphemisms. So like instead of calling him a vampire, you'd call him a lugat in Albanian, which means charming. So if you're complimenting him, you're not. Yeah.
I just did the eyebrow wiggle, sorry.
Yeah. If you call him charming, he's not going to hurt you. So in general, vampires are created in a variety of ways. A lot of these are going to refer to the burial rites. A very common one that you see.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah,
can you give me a feel for the like time period for like when these origin stories are starting?
Yes. So hold on.
Because I'm curious, like when we get into modern or vampire origins, if it's like very different. Like I just want to kind of see how it's evolving.
No, yeah. Here, let me pull up at least the 1700s.
Okay.
So not that old, but pretty dang old.
When Grecian vampires were a thing, were they more modern than like when they were city-states warring with each other? Well, I guess they were city-states warring with each other for a very long time.
They were.
Until pretty modern times, actually.
I'll pull up specifically about the vampire. I'm a lot of my sources that I'm using are from the PowerPoints used in my class.
Still the coolest thing ever that you took a whole class about this.
It was my favorite class ever. My favorite lecture class ever. Yeah, so the vampire was modern in the 18th century. Like that was people were talking about vampires in the 1700s, which I think is so interesting. Through the witch trials was around the same time too, which we'll get into a little bit.
Yeah, inevitably, right?
Inevitably. So traditionally, a vampire is made when something passes over. So when you die,
yes,
your friends, your family would lay you out and like prepare the body or whatever. I don't know what they were specifically doing, but they would lay you out. And so if something passed over the body, like if you hand something to one person or another, a lot of times a cat is mentioned. Like if a cat jumps over your body, if a shadow falls over your body, that means
that's hard to avoid.
Yeah, it is. Which it's vague on purpose, so you can blame a vampire on whatever's going on in your village.
Yes.
But when you do that, the evil is allowed in. Also, any omission of burial rites on purpose or on accident. There's a lot of Christianity references too, like if the spirit enters the body 40 days after death, or during like the liminal times, like between Christmas and Epiphany, which is on January 6th, I think.
The liminal times. I didn't know Christianity had liminal times.
Yeah, like and New Year's is another one where like you're passing from one year to the next one. Like that's a liminal time. 40 days after Easter, other holy days. Or if you are the offspring of a werewolf or a devil and a witch, then you could become a vampire. If your dad's a witch.
If your dad's a witch and your mom's a vampire and your mom's a werewolf.
Yeah.
Then you're a vampire.
Also, people with bad morals who are like I say bad morals with quotations. So unbaptized, excommunicated from the church. If you killed yourself, no good. You turn into a vampire. And also just bad luck. If I say bad again in quotations. If you're born disabled, or if you die early or unnaturally, you might also turn into a vampire.
Mm-hmm. Or if you operate outside of society's norms. If you are gay.
Absolutely. Yep. Hey, you got it.
I got the thing.
Got it. You solved my riddle. Yeah, you did it. Yeah. So there were a lot of ways you can become a vampire, and we'll get into some of the quirky ones that have regional differences in a minute, but those are all pretty widespread ways that you would become a vampire.
Okay, cool.
And like I said, you were quieted. You weren't hunted or killed. You were prevented, or you were like
put at peace or something.
Yeah. You weren't really like going out and finding the vampire that was walking around killing stuff and spreading disease and stuff. It was you were quieting it.
Did that start when vampire stories became works of fiction and literature? Like, is the hunting of the vampire something that originated in literary circles, or was it something that was like, well, it's got to be rooted in something?
Yeah. A lot of times it was you weren't really hunting it, but there were definitely times, which I'll talk about, where you would go and kill a vampire. I'm so excited to tell you about some of this stuff. I don't want to spoil it yet, though. Okay. So some common ways you would quiet a vampire was a hawthorn or aspen, I think stake through the torso, which we still have to this day. But instead of using it, it wasn't used to kill it. It was used to pin it to the ground.
Ooh.
Or to separate the soul from the body also. Sometimes it was to kill also, but it was mostly just to pin the guy to the ground so he didn't get up again. Some people have heard of this scattering grain or seed, since they're a creature made of...
So they have to count it.
Yeah, so they have to pick it up and count each individual thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's another reference to like something out of order. He's compelled to pick it up and count. Sometimes riddles. If you told a riddle to a vampire who's trying to get into your house, you'd be like, I can't figure this one out. I guess I'll go.
I'm going back to the grave tonight, guys.
Going back to the grave, yeah. And then also burning the corpse.
I heard, okay, please tell me, I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit. Didn't they like feed the ashes of the burned bodies to people to like rid them of the curse of the vampire a lot?
I think that is something that happened in some areas, yeah. Although sometimes you would also throw it into like a river or just like get rid of the ashes.
Right.
But that is something you're cooking. I don't remember where, but that is something that people would do. They'd put it in wine and drink it.
I don't drink wine.
A wild cocktail.
Holy moly, that's the best sangria you're ever gonna have.
All right, let's get into some regional differences. I want to start with Serbia, and also Montenegro and Bosnia. They all had pretty similar vampire traits. So the guy I referenced earlier, Petar Blagojevich, or Peter Blagojevich, I don't know how we're supposed to say it in America, but it was documented by Provisor Frombald. He was like a government guy.
Okay.
I don't know what a I might be saying that wrong also. I'm going to say a lot of things wrong.
That's okay.
And we're just going to have to deal with it. It's okay. You don't have to know. It's okay. So Peter was a peasant man, and he died. And then within 8 days after his death, 9 people claimed that Peter came and strangled them in the night, and then they would die shortly after. His wife said that he visited her and asked for his shoes, and then she was so freaked out that she moved to a different village.
Whoa, okay.
So villagers, after all these people died, they were like, hey, I want to dig this guy up. And so they asked Frumbald if they could dig him up, and the local priest, to witness it. And then Frumbald was like, I don't know about this. I think we should get permission from the Austrian authorities, because it was in Austrian territory. But the villagers were like, dude, it's going to take too long. And we're all going to leave.
We're going to all get vampired if we don't leave.
If you don't let us dig this guy up, we're going to go. And he was like, all right, fine. So they dug him up and found that he was not decomposed. His mouth had blood all over it. His hair, beard, and nails were all long. And then the villagers staked his heart, causing quote-unquote fresh blood to flow from his ears and mouth of the corpse, and the body was burned. Oof. And that's one of the first documented cases of vampires. That's from Beans. Where is it? When's that from? That was in 1725.
1725. Okay, so fresh blood, scary. People were getting strangled in the night. I mean, if without the...
And then they would die.
And then they would die. Like, without modern medicine and modern science, I get how that would be like, hey, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, no way.
Our villagers dying after they claim to get strangled.
Yeah.
That's wild. Like, I don't have a good explanation for that. I'm sure there is one, but I don't have a good explanation for it.
I mean, and we're not really documenting, like, how these people are dying, I don't think. Like,
oh, right.
Like, what were the symptoms? Like, what...
Was it all the same symptoms?
Yeah, because it could have been any kind of illness or whatever.
Right. Did they all drink the same bad vine? I don't know.
Should have added some vampire ashes to it. Probably.
Probably. Don't drink that, guys. It's bad.
Don't drink that. Okay, this is something very interesting. So this is in Bulgaria and Macedonia. They had a very interesting deviation from the vampire norm. So in Bulgaria, the vampire had a life cycle of sorts. So he would start off as the styanka, which means the shadow. It's the initial unseen form. Actually, in all the forms, it's usually invisible unless you can somehow see him.
Okay.
So he starts off as a shadow. And then he becomes a bag of blood. And I don't know how to pronounce this, but it means a bagpipe bag. So he resembles the head of an animal with a sharp snout and little feet with long black nails, and he rolls around and he sucks blood. And that's a vampire. That's a stage 2 vamp. And then it becomes a pletinik, which is a fleshed out one. So it becomes like a human-like form, but it's really jiggly because it doesn't have bones, but it looks kind of human. And then it becomes a krevnik, and it's solid and has bones, and it goes around being its own little vampire guy. But the life cycle is so interesting to me because no one else has that. Like the little bag of blood that rolls around. It's pretty awesome to me.
Yeah, because that doesn't even feel humanoid. Like, all of the vampire stuff is either like a misty, like shadowy kind of thing, or very much humanoid. Mm-hmm. This is a bag of blood. That's wild.
A bag of blood.
Huh. Incredibly
wild. So you kill it, obviously, by puncturing it. And then it leaves behind a vampire jelly that you boil and burn and cast in a river. There was one, I didn't write this down, but I do remember there was this one story of this lady who claimed she saw some of the vampire jelly in her yard, and then she peed on it to make it lose its power.
Problem solved. You got it in one.
Easy. No problem. No vampire for you.
No way.
Here's another, I don't want to say goofy, but it's kind of goofy, huh? Here's another goofy area. So the Serbian Roma, not the Romanians, but the Roma, the nomadic group, they have a very, well, I don't know. I haven't talked to one. I haven't talked to any Roma lately. But we learned that they had a very dualistic way of thinking. So there was a very strong, if something wasn't good, it was evil. Like, there's no neutral things. So when it comes to vampires, that can make some interesting situations. So vampires, human males are the most dangerous. Could also be vampires.
Awesome.
You could have vampired animals. The most dangerous ones were snakes and stallions and lambs.
A snake vampire.
A snake vampire.
I'd be scared.
That was pretty scary. I think the lamb is probably a reference to
Christianity. Is that what you were gonna say?
You got it.
The Christian lamb.
Yes, it is.
The baby
That's
Jesus.
exactly what I was gonna say.
Innocent lamb of innocence.
Baby Jesus.
But it's a vampire. Scary.
But he's a vampire.
I just appreciate that symbolism.
Yeah.
That's good because that's like you always get the horns and the tail when something's demonic, but I like that it's just the vampiric lamb. That's really good.
Mm-hmm. I can see like a really good like woodcut of a lamb that's a vampire. I see it in my brain. I might do that one day. That kind of rules, actually. Now, in addition to vampirized animals, you also had vampirized plants. So a pumpkin or a melon could be a vampire.
Okay.
And this is something that people, this is like legit. Like, I'm not making this up. So they would roll around and move by themselves. They had a noise they would make. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it was spelled BRRL.
Burl.
Burl. I think it's probably better if you can roll your R's.
Burl. Like that?
Yeah, like that.
That sounds so goofy. Burl.
Burl.
It's like the most aggressive pumpkin I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Vampire pumpkin.
So they would smush that and then boil it and throw it
and cook it into a delicious pie.
No way. You can't eat a vampirized watermelon. Are you kidding me? Do you want to turn into a vampire?
Probably be pretty tasty though.
Probably would be pretty good, huh?
Pretty good, probably. Some pumpkin ravioli.
Now. Ooh. Vampirized pumpkin ravioli.
You'd probably get like it'd probably be like very fortifying, you know? Like you'd get 3 extra hearts on Zelda after you eat that one.
The way when you said fortifying and we're talking about pumpkins and that's it. That's the end of the sentence.
That's the end of
it. I don't need to finish it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you have your pumpkins and your watermelons, but you also if you don't use certain tools for 3 years, that's a vampire too. Unfortunately. And you do have to burn that thing and throw it away.
Interesting. So I've got a spatula that's been in the junk drawer for 3 years and that one's got to go.
It's actually evil and it turned into a vampire.
Awesome.
So you should probably get rid of that ASAP.
Okay. Will do. No problem.
Something that I thought that I hadn't seen in any of the other cultures was you could also quiet a vampire with a gun. You could just shoot it. And that's good.
Okay.
The Roma were kind of awesome for that.
Yeah, that kind of rules.
They're kind of cool for that, actually. So, shoot it with a gun.
Vampire's gone.
Vampire's gone. Easy. Okay, this is what I'm very excited to talk to you about.
Okay.
So, in Romania, and also Ukraine, but we're going to talk about Romania right now. They referred to vampires as strigoi or moroi. Oh, in other cultures, they called it a vampir, an upir, an opir, other stuff like that. But anyway, here they called it a strigoi or a moroi, which are the words for witches and sleep demons. And witches were like a thing.
Yeah.
They were as much of a presence as vampires were. So, in addition to witches and sleep demons and regular vampires, you also had living vampires. And these were called, well, in Ukrainian, they were called dvoidushniki, which means two-souled. But you had the living vampires. And their whole thing was that they're vampire hunters, basically. And they have powers, and they fight dead vampires.
What?
And those were the strigoi. Yeah.
The vampires are at war with each other?
Yeah. The vampires go outside the town, usually at like a crossroads. That has some kind of symbolism there. And then they fight the dead vampire. They do battle there.
Okay, that rules.
And that kind of rules, actually.
That actually rules.
Actually awesome. So you had people whose job, they were identified as living vampires.
While they were just there.
While they were just alive.
Whoa.
And then their job was to fight dead vampires or quiet dead vampires.
Was Van Helsing a living vampire?
I don't know.
I hope so.
We didn't really talk about Van Helsing a lot in my vampire class, surprisingly.
I'll talk to you about Dracula in a minute.
Thank you. We'll get to Dracula.
We'll get to Dracula.
So living vampires, I'm going to say something so not surprising. Living vampires, like witches, were usually women.
Yeah.
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 Tracks.
So
they could control animals. They can turn into animals, most notably a butterfly or a moth. You could see that a lot in other cultures. And they can take the power of milk and bread, which I don't know why I wrote that down because that's kind of funny.
Milk and bread. Surely, what does that mean?
So yeah, they took the essence Like the living, yes. So like if someone ate the bread that a vampire took the power of.
That a vampire took the power of? How do you take power from milk and egg? You have to...
You wouldn't know. You're not a vampire. Where are you? Unless.
Wait. Are you saying like they're taking the calories away from it? Like they're taking the power that it gives humans, which is calories, the energy. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
So to get like that low-cal diet that we all want and crave.
Just get a vampire. That's really good.
Okay. Were the living vampires seen as evil? Or because witches were like generally viewed as evil, but the vampires were not evil. The living vampires.
They weren't someone you'd want to be friends with.
Okay.
They were outcasts of society, but they weren't like, no one was hunting them down.
Okay.
Because you needed the living vampire to get rid of the dead vampires.
Yes, absolutely. That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. That's a great, I mean, I can just like already see the angsty OCs of the living vampires forever alone, cursed to wander these plains, killing the dead vampires. It's a perfect D&D character waiting to happen.
Absolutely. I think Geralt was a living vampire. No, I'm kidding.
That would be cool, though.
He's something, though, huh?
Yeah.
He's the Witcher.
He's the witch. Oh, yeah. I only watched the first episode.
They have Strigoi in The Witcher, don't they? He fights one of those guys. Although they count... Oh, Striga. That's what he calls them. Striga. So when you could identify... So since there's witches and there's also living vampires, how do you tell? How do you tell which one's which?
That's a great question.
Well... A living vampire, when it's born, it can be born with a caul or a tail. Do you know what the caul is? Mm-mm. It's so sometimes a baby's born in like there's a membrane attached, and sometimes the baby is born in it. I think usually it just sloughs off during birth, but sometimes it's in there. Or a tail, which is just another. Sometimes people are born with tails. I had a friend in high school who was born with a tail. If a dead vampire looks at a pregnant person, or if they don't eat enough salt, then you might give birth to a living vampire.
Whoa. Okay.
So if a dead vampire looked at my mom, then I could have been born.
Could have been a vampire.
A dvodishniki. But I wasn't.
Hey, I mean, how do you know? Just something to think about. Unless
I'm going to talk to my mom about this. Unless talk to my mom about this.
Get on that,
Mom. Did a vampire look at you? You can be honest with me. Please. I also wanted to talk about briefly, so they also in Romania, they have a creature called a varcolaki, which is a moon-eating demon, which has some ties to werewolves, which they called werewolves Vokodlak or Varkolak or Vukodlak, stuff like that. So you have the Varkolaki in Romania. And there's a quote here that I think is beautiful. Every time I read this for class, and I was like, holy moly, Agnes Mergoci, author of The Vampire in Romania, you wrote poetry in this book for me.
I think you read this in comics class, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I'm very I don't remember it at all. I'm very excited to hear it again.
Oh, I'm so excited. I wrote this down because I was like, I need to turn this into something. But it goes, they attack the heavenly bodies. They bite the moon so that she appears covered with blood or till none of her is left. Some people say that as the moon is really stronger than the Varkolaki, they are just able to bite it. But in the end, the moon conquers. For the world would come to an end if the moon were really eaten up.
Yeah, that rules. That rules.
The moon is so powerful.
The moon is so powerful.
The moon fights all the werewolves away. So good. So as I said, Ukrainians also had the living vampires, the Dvodushniki, and the dead vampires, which they called the Upiri.
Okay.
And they did battle. And you find a lot of the richest vampire history there. In Ukraine, the Carpatho-Russians, Belarus too. That's a lot of the vampire testimony we have is from that area. They also had child vampires.
Okay. What was the difference? Were they dead vampires or living vampires?
They were...
Because a living vampire is just a person who grows up.
Yes.
So they could have been kids at some point. So it's probably dead vampires.
I think he was a living vampire.
Okay.
Because he was going around warning the villagers about the dead vampires in town. That's what it was. Got it. He was going around. Yeah. And they had he had them all line up, and he pointed out the dead vampire, and they burned that guy in a pile.
That's very Salem witch trial.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Line them all up. That's
Huge.
the one. That's the one you're looking for.
Apparently he had like a white cloth tied around his leg, and that was the identifier. So it's like the asymmetry of it was like, that was another thing I just remembered, like the tying a white cloth having. And I think also there's something, and this might be a little wrong, but there was also like, I can't remember, it might have been Serbia. They were at kind of war. The political tensions were high between Serbia and Turkey. And so you would sometimes refer to a vampire. I don't know the Serbian words for it, but like you would basically call them not a Turk, or like not related to Turkish people. And so like I guess maybe in Turkey they had like white cloths tied around their legs or something. And that was one of the like, oh.
So they saw a Turkish person and we're like, you're
like,
clearly
you're
a vampire,
bro.
No.
Clearly a vampire. That's no good.
That's no good.
Come on, guys.
Please, no xenophobia.
No xenophobia, please. So there's some folklore. And then we have the creation of the pop culture vampire.
Oh gosh, yes.
And that happens around the Enlightenment era.
Lovely. So
when we're documenting cases like Peter Blagojevic's and the rest of the vampires in the quote-unquote vampire epidemic, we're fixating on the decomposition of the corpse and vampirism as a contagion, because the Enlightenment is all about science.
Oh yeah, we're getting that good science.
And then the Romantic period comes around, and folks are writing stuff down. They're writing novels and fiction. So we have the Phantasmagoriana, which is a French translation of the German Gespensterbuch, which means ghost book.
Awesome.
I might have said that wrong. Womp womp. And that inspired Byron's Fragment of a Novel. Have you heard of this?
No, I don't think so.
So this is the first, we think, fiction about a vampire. Before
Carmilla, before Dracula,
before
everything.
Carmilla.
Okay.
So it was written at the famous Gothic writing contest at Lake Geneva, where Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein.
Of course, yes.
And all that.
Yes.
And Byron brought his physician, Polidori, and Byron wrote this thing called Fragment of a Novel, and it was about a vampire and a guy, and they were traveling. And Polidori...
What's with all the traveling? Jonathan Harker be traveling.
They be traveling.
Vampires and traveling? Is that anything?
Let's talk about that. I don't know. Vampires... Well, sometimes you would try to, in order to quiet a vampire, you would ward it off. So make it go to a different village and leave yours alone. So maybe that's something. So Polidori, he finished the fragment of the novel, and he published it under the name The Vampire, spelled with a Y.
He published
under Byron's name.
Oh, I thought you meant he used the alias The Vampire.
Whoa, no, that's awesome though. I wish. Polidori the Vampire? Whoa. John the Vampire Polidori. I think his name was John. Oh my gosh, that rules. No, he called the finished novel The Vampire. And and this is all speculative, if he actually wrote it or if Byron actually wrote it, whatever. But Polidori was there, so it's entirely possible. And at this point, it's a completely different creature. It's very vaguely, distantly based on folklore, but you've got that heavy romantic lens on it.
Yes.
He's aristocratic now. He's pale. He preys on virgins. He bites the neck and drains the blood. And he passes for human. He's not a walking corpse.
Okay.
And then we have Carmilla.
Let's talk about Carmilla.
Let's talk about Carmilla now.
Yay.
Let's talk about Carmilla.
Oh gosh. Okay. I just read it for the first time very recently.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because you read it.
Oh, that was the first time. That's right.
That was the first time I read it. I read it all in one sitting.
It's pretty short.
It's short.
And it's also great.
I'd
never heard of this before. It was written
by an Irish guy.
When was it written? Yes, Sheridan Le Fanu.
Yes.
When was it written? 1872. It was written by Sheridan Le Fanu. And it's very wonderful. It's about a vampire named Carmilla.
Who has many aliases.
She does have many. This is true. Wasn't there's something, I don't want to spoil it. It's literally 200 years old.
Yeah, it's 200 years old. Also, the book itself is like 4 pages long.
This is true. There's something about her mom in there, isn't there?
Yeah, okay. So kind of like the basic premise is that somebody, they con this family. So there's this daughter and her father, her very wealthy father, who live in this big manor house. And they are out traveling. They're going to visit their friend because, they're in the countryside. So they have to like travel very far to even see friends. So they're traveling, and then they see a trailer or another like wagon that's been knocked over. But then they go up to this carriage, and this older woman, who I think Carmilla has hypnotized or like swindled into doing this for her, is telling the father and the daughter that she has to go. She's like, I have to go. And my daughter, this little Carmilla, so sweet and innocent, she needs to go with you guys. And it's the weirdest justification ever. And the daughter is just like, oh my God, Dad, I'm so lonely. Please, please, please I
need a friend, please.
I need a friend, please. And then they go back to the house with Carmilla. And then it's, they start hanging the daughter.
Carmilla lives with them.
And now Carmilla lives with them. And in the beginning of the book, it opens with Carmilla has this dream about a vampire who visits her in the night. Or a creature, some sort of creature that visits her and bites her.
And you also, that's referenced in Dracula too, I think.
Yes.
By the way, this is a heavy influence on Dracula.
Oh yeah, super.
By the way.
Yeah, super duper.
Yes.
It's the proto Dracula. Affectionately so. My first exposure to vampire literature was Dracula. I read that in 8th grade for the first time. And, it's the classic vampire. I mean, he's tall, he's got the cape, he's pale, he crawls on walls like a lizard. All the classic vampires. Like he talks like this. He's from Transylvania. He's a big castle. And
I didn't think Transylvania was real until embarrassingly late in my life.
That rules. You just thought it was where Dracula lived.
Yeah.
That's
no good.
awesome.
I thought it was fictional.
But so you get that picture. That was my first picture, and it's many people's first image of like what vampires are. And then I read Carmilla, and she's like barely a vampire, or it's very abstract compared to what you see in Dracula and in like Hollywood depictions of vampires, because she doesn't have fangs. Like, you can't see her fangs. She doesn't have claws. She's not really described very much physically in general. The one of the coolest things was her aversion to hearing Christian song. Like, there's a scene where there's a funeral because Carmilla has killed someone in the village. Right. And there's a funeral, and they're carrying the body around, and they're like singing local songs of like mourning songs, but they're Christian. And Carmilla starts like flipping the fuck out. She's like not okay with them singing songs. And what's his last name? Sheridan's
Lefanu.
I'm his friend. I can call him Sheridan. Sheridan.
You can call him Ferris.
Sheridan says, he never like pins down what Carmilla is, which I think is intentionally left vague, because it's not the classic like, oh, the holy water or the sign of the cross, like the crucifix being held up. It's this song that's being sung for mourning of someone that Carmilla has killed that is the thing that indicates the aversion to Christianity and like holiness, which was very cool.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, she's like, this is so annoying. Can you guys shut up?
Yes, exactly. She's like throwing a fit. And then her friend, I forget Carmela's the daughter's name, but her friend is just like, dude, you have to stop. Like, they're grieving.
Stop. Get a grip.
She's just freaking out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Also, there's a scene at the end. I like how they resolve it. Well, okay. It's also in all of the romantic and like gothic horror literature, it's so crazy how like absolutely obvious it is that there's a monster causing problems. And like in Dracula, it's like Jonathan Harker's obliviousness is like laughable to anyone who has read that book. It's so funny. And then in Carmilla, they know her name is Carmilla. And then they have this picture of a girl who looks exactly like Carmilla, that is exactly the same age as Carmilla, but her name is it's the same letters switched around.
It's
Marcella or something.
Marcia something. Yeah.
Like, and it's like, guys, I need you to look at the facts. They have those two instances, and then the one that is like finally makes them wake up is when their friend, they finally meet their friend, and their friend is like very troubled, and he's like, well, my daughter's just died. And then as soon as he says that my daughter that's the same age as your daughter died because she had a friend, that's when you know. But it takes until the end of the story.
That's when you know.
Like describes the exact. Actually, I don't even think it clicks for the daughter then, because after he tells the story and is like, my daughter experienced the exact same symptoms that your daughter experienced, with like fatigue and feeling like she got bit and feeling like sick and drained and whatever. And then he concludes that story and he's like, and then my daughter died. And then the daughter is like, that's crazy. That sounds a lot like what's happening to me. Babe, that is what's happening to you.
Anyway.
Hey, you gotta
the same exact thing. You did it. Hey, wait, hold on. Almost there. You're so close. You're
and
so
then
close.
Her dad like shuffles her away with the guy that the friend they met, and then they go and they kill Carmilla. And I think, like, I don't even know if it clicked for the daughter then. Laura, thank you. Gosh. Yes, I don't even know if it clicked for Laura at the end, because she's like, yeah, I never saw Carmilla, my good friend, my beautiful good friend, again. It's like, actually, no, because never mind. Because at the very beginning of the book, it opens, they do the very fun framing device of opening it with a letter from her future self, and it's her being like, these are the events as they happened to me, and this is like the story of the vampire who I met or something. So I think she does eventually realize it, but it is wild, the like obliviousness of Gothic protagonists.
Were people just dumb back then, or?
I don't know. Well, and it's weird too, because they didn't have the modern science and medicine to like defeat the skepticism, so, or like to bring about the skepticism. So they were just like in denial. It's weird.
I love Karma. I should read it again, because it has literally been a year since I've read it, and I don't remember anything about it other than that it was a heavy influence on Dracula, which I also read. And I found it, I was a little nervous when I was assigned to read Dracula, because it was an old book, and old book. Don't make me read old book. They talk so silly in old book. But I found it so easy to read, which was great.
Can we theorize a little bit on why it's so readable? Because I agree. And my theory is that it's the diary format, or like the like journalistic, I'm writing letters, I'm writing in my journal, this is like a report, because it makes it feel very modern. Because like
that's true.
It feels very that sort of narrative where you're getting information through an indirect, or you're getting it from the most direct source, I guess, but you're not getting necessarily the context around it. It's not like actual prose, which makes it, or it's prose, but it's not a continuous narrative. Here's everything that's happening. It's you getting little snippets, which also is very fun, because then it's a very good dramatic irony thing, which is also a very modern thing. You get like Jonathan Harker's perspective, and you know that shit's going down, but they don't know all the way back in Mina's in London in England, right? Because they're so far away, and it takes a long time for these letters to reach them. So there's a fun like dramatic irony and modernist thing to it that makes it, I think, more digestible for Gothic literature.
I think you're right.
Frankenstein's written the same way, I think. Frankenstein's all letters.
I haven't read Frankenstein because I was scared of it, but I think I will read it.
It's pretty, I think it's good. I Victor Frankenstein, as much as he's like morally not, he's morally dubious, I love him so much.
Oh, you think the guy who built a human and then kicked him out?
Yeah. Left him on the streets.
I was like, I hate this guy.
This baby who's just
Bro
into
just
the world.
Born.
We tossed this guy out. He's gross.
Ew. What the heck is this? Bro, you built him. This is your Subway sandwich. You knew exactly what you were doing. Come on, be serious.
So, like, morally, maybe he's not the best.
But he's an interesting character.
He's such an interesting character. I mean, he's like the OG mad scientist, and he is like the birth of science fiction. You would love it. You would love Frankenstein. It's fun. Dracula is like I said, it's many people's like first experience of, I guess, outside of pop culture, like Twilight and Wizards of Waverly Place vampires. This is like literary vampires, and it's honestly, a Dracula is more interesting to me now as a comparison to Interview with the Vampire, even more so than it is as a standalone thing, because of how different, like, we'll talk about that. Well, I won't tease it. I think there was a big paradigm shift from going from Dracula to Interview with the Vampire, because we talked about it a little bit the other day, but like the idea of the vampire not being the protagonist, but the vampire being the antagonist of the story, the creature, the monster, the evil, the thing that they're trying to get away from and conquer, versus Interview with the Vampire, where Anne Rice is writing totally from the perspective of the vampire. You're getting inside of the head of the vampire, and suddenly it's not the vampire used as a tool for exploring humans' fear of death and decay, but it's human fear of immortality and humanity and like what it means to be a person. Because I mean, okay, Lestat is my favorite character in Interview with the Vampire, but Louis is the one that we're in the head of, right? So you get this constant dialogue with himself that he's having over and over and over, trying to figure out if he is evil or if he is a son of Satan or if he's, you know, a demon. And he's also been given immortality. So is it, and the conclusion that he reaches, at least like at the middle of the book, it changes later when he meets his lover. The conclusion that he reaches inevitably in the middle of the book is that he's cursed, because like if he's immortal and he is this evil thing that in order to survive has to end the lives of other humans, it's like you've been cursed to do that for all of eternity. But I just think that the transformation of vampire from this inhuman thing to the most human thing ever, of just deep contemplation of what it means to be alive and to do moral and immoral things, is like the greatest thing that could have ever happened to vampires in media.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's I feel like the perception of Interview with a Vampire is that it's like trashy romance, maybe. yeah Which is a shame, because it is so like, it's so heavily influenced how we think about vampires today.
Yes,
in the sense like that they're not like wholly evil and terrifying, but that they are more humanized. And I think that's so interesting that Anne Rice did that. That's so cool of her.
I agree. And I think like, I feel like even a lot of the mythos of vampires in modern stuff is influenced directly, even more so from like Anne Rice's mythology and origin story than it is some of the older stuff. Because like the idea of in Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles is like the way a vampire gets turned into a vampire is the person gets bitten by a vampire, their blood is drained, and then they drink the blood of the vampire who drained them, and then they turn into a vampire. And that for me is like, that is the origin story, like
the standard.
That's the standard. Yeah, like we watch What We Do in the Shadows, both the mockumentary or like the old movie, the original movie, and the TV show. Both of them, it's like that's how you make a vampire. And now that Anne Rice's specific interpretation of how a vampire is created is the standard in fiction and just in stories today, which is crazy to think that that novel had that much of an impact. And
a queer novel too.
Yes. Oh my
because
gosh.
It is extremely queer.
It's so really super gay and queer and awesome.
I said it's queer, and then that's what made you remember your notes.
Dude, this is my favorite quote from the whole book. What would Christ need have done to make me follow him like Matthew or Peter? Dress well, to begin with, and have a luxurious head of pampered yellow hair. And of course, we know that Lestat is the one with the pampered yellow hair who dresses beautifully and ornately, and Louis regularly comments on that when they're living together in the same house in New Orleans.
They were roommates.
With their adopted daughter. So it's just like, it's crazy that a 70s vampire novel is like that queer, and that like it's like, and it almost feels like Anne Rice can get away with it because it's like, well, they're vampires, they're monsters anyways, But the thing is, like, and maybe that was enough justification for it to like slide under the radar back then. But nowadays, when we read that, we see that the romance between these characters is so genuine, even if it's like a love that exists like in ephemera, right? Because like they're immortal beings, and Anne Rice makes a point of being like, well, it's not, we don't need base needs like sex and to have a good time, which is like, yes, okay, but there's clearly a super strong emotional connection between these characters, and it's just so easy to read it as queer now. And then to be vampires who are queer, it's like vampires being undead and being like monstrous creatures of the night means that they're allowed to operate outside the norms of society and like the rules of society, so they can be weird and queer and all of these things that aren't normally accepted in society because they're not part of society. They're dead. They're the living dead. Vampire stories would just not be anywhere as interesting as they are to me now if it wasn't for that shift in the vampire narrative.
You're right, and you should say it.
And then this is the timeline: Carmilla, Dracula, Interview with the Vampire, and then let's talk about our favorite. The best. The best. What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Anne Rice ran so Taika Waititi could walk. Did I say that right?
I think Anne Rice meandered and strolled so that Taika Waititi could sprint.
Do a cartwheel
and sprint and flip.
He did, because he did elevate the.
Oh yeah.
He did elevate what she did.
Oh yeah.
In a major way.
In a major way.
If you live under a rock and have never seen or heard of What We Do in the Shadows, it is a delightful mockumentary in the style of The Office about some vampires who are very stupid, and they are trying to conquer the world. And they're starting with Staten Island, New York. Yes. And they're really bad at it.
They're so bad at it.
And they're very wonderful.
Oh.
And they have their familiar Guillermo, who so desperately wants to be a vampire.
Almost, every character is canonically queer, because that's the fun thing. It's like they're vampires. They've been alive for 400 years. They don't need to... They can have crazy orgies all the time if they want.
Well, like,
no one's gonna stop them.
Like 3.
Yeah, episode 3. It's like and it's just so it feels so genuine. And here's one thing, this is like not even, we're talking about vampire media, but this isn't strictly about vampires, but I do want to say that I love the Pride episode, because the thing is, in any other show, if there is a Pride episode, it feels so bad,
so corny,
so gross, and like it just corny and like weird and off-putting and not genuine. But this show, the thing about What We Do in the Shadows is every episode they make you aware that these characters are queer, unapologetically so. Like they're completely
and
unapologetic.
like it's normal, because hey guys, they unlocked it. They found it out. They did it. Gay people are normal. They're just like us.
They're just normal people. And they've had 500 years of wisdom to understand that and unpack that. Mm-hmm. So it's just, so that episode rolls around, and it's just like, now they have pride flags, and that's the only difference. Because they're just... It's
extremely silly.
It's so silly. They're just their normal selves that they are in every other episode.
Gay is cool. Yeah. Gay is in.
Gay is in.
Gay is in.
Yeah.
So Laszlo's your favorite vampire too? Or?
Laszlo's my favorite vampire, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Matt Berry's a genius.
Yeah, I can't get his voice out of my head, guys.
No, never. At literally any time anyone talks about New York... Mm-hmm.
Manhattan,
New York City.
New York City. We are the vampires of New York City.
New York City.
Jackie Daytona.
Oh man, Jackie Daytona. Oh my god.
Maybe the greatest episode of TV from the 21st century.
Yeah, probably. I think you're right. I think you're probably right. I think you're absolutely right.
I don't know if it was in the first season, but it was at least like in the second season. And the like for a whole episode, they knew that episode was so good that they could do an entire episode just with Laszlo, and it would be totally fine. And it would be actually probably the best episode of the entire show. Mm-hmm. Where did the vampires can't see themselves in mirrors thing come from?
I think we talked about that, but I forgot.
Okay. Because I'm thinking about it. Dracula could not see his shadow or see his mirror, see himself in the mirror. It wasn't mentioned. Mirrors were not mentioned in Carmilla that I can remember. But I know that that's a thing that is still in modern stuff.
Yes. I don't remember where it came from.
Interesting.
Or I don't remember the theories, because nothing that I said about the folklore, by the way, is 100% fact. I want to stress.
Layman's terms.
Layman's terms. Heavy on layman. Yeah, I took how long are college semester class? I took 1
months.
semester of a vampire class. Come on, guys.
Pretty cool.
Pretty great, though.
Pretty awesome. You learned a lot. I can tell.
I learned so much. That was the best class ever, man. It's so interesting to me. Which also, by the way, the living vampires were destined to become dead vampires when they died. So that's something that's also interesting to me. You're perpetuating this cycle of dead and living vampires.
Whoa. Okay, well, let's talk on that, because that's... What?
Yeah.
So you're born being told that you're, like, this savior, protector. Dude, that just upped the emo of the characters even more! Even more! Are you kidding me? I didn't know it was possible. They know. When they meet their time, it's actually not their time, and they're gonna rise again.
I'm gonna be an upir when I die. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna be hunted by a dvodishniki.
I can't believe that's not in more modern vampire stuff. Like, that's a rich story vein. Somebody get on
Come
that.
on, storytellers, get on it. Get on it. Okay, Audrey,
yes,
we're gonna need to rein it in a little bit. This is an academic setting. I'm trying to do a lecture here. That's very fun. It's very fun.
Can I roll my stats real quick?
Can you roll your stats?
Can I fill out my character sheet?
In my classroom?
No, you're right.
In my classroom?
No, you're right. That's not, yeah. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
See me after class, actually.
Oh, God, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. No, don't worry. It's just, see me after class.
Okay.
All right, everyone. That'll be all for today. Your homework is on the canvas. Go ahead and do that. And then I will see you next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday, teacher.
For next week's class.
Bye. Actually, no, sorry.
Stay after class.
Sorry.
So tell me about this character you're building.
I'm thinking it's going to be like a Van Helsing type.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's been done, but like...
It's been done.
No, we didn't.
It's okay. Van Helsing's cool. I respect him. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of the Jesters of the Round Table evening radio show. We hope you've enjoyed your time here and that you stay safe. Go to the jazz clubs if you must, like I said. And follow us on Instagram at Jesters Roundtable. If you'd like to send us an email, you can send that at jesterspod@gmail.com. Oh, wait, we forgot to do our songs, Izzie. Would you like to recommend a song? Oh, shucks. Let me pull up my Spotify real quick. Yes, please do. This week's song is going to be Graveyards Full by the Growlers. And I'm going to recommend I'll Be Seeing You by Billie Holiday. Classic. Thank you all so much for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. Fuck. There's more to it, but I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to ruin Max's campaign for just any passerby who listens. We're going to get an angry email. Yeah, Max is going to write in. Be like, what the fuck, Audrey? That was confidential. My grand plan. You signed an NDA, bro. I trusted you.
absolutely. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, wait. Clean day.
Good night.
Good night, New York.
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Okay. Okay.